how many authors are writing about Kansas. And I love, and everybody loves, I think, when an author writes about a place that they know. When Michael Connolly writes about LA or when Stephen King writes about Maine, it feels authentic. It feels like those people live there, they know that place, and it gives everything sort of a grounded feel. And I think it lends them a style. That might otherwise be generic. Not that they're generic. I don't mean that. But so yeah, I wrote 5 books set in Victorian England, and I was like, I'm from Kansas. I live in Kansas. I shouldn't. I'm not pretending. I'm a Brit. I'm a Kansas boy, so I should maybe use that. I can draw on that somehow, even though it's not the most exciting place in the world to live or grow up. There's still, I think, I think as much as maybe it's flyover country, there's also some fascination with sort of the barrenness of a place like this. Westerns are often set in Kansas and Oklahoma and Texas, and parts of Texas that are sort of barren. And so there's something to be said about taking that barrenness and setting drama. Red Rabbit wasn't originally supposed to be a hybrid at all. I watched Magnificent Seven with my son, and he hates westerns. And I was trying to get him to like westerns, so I showed him that. And so then we were talking about it, and I started thinking about the structure of it. And the cowboys just take the farmer's word for it, and they ride out there to get rid of bandits. But what if they're being used? And so I started thinking about, what if it's not bandits? What if they're blaming somebody for their problems who doesn't deserve it? And so originally, Red Rabbit was supposed to be about this woman living at the outskirts of town, and the farmers blame her and bring in these cowboys. And I could talk about what it's like to be a woman living on the prairie by herself, and the suspicion and the violence and everything. And then she turned out to be a witch. So as I'm writing it, she turns out to be a witch. And I thought, well, so this is a different kind of thing than I thought I was writing. I thought I was writing a Western, and instead I'm writing a horror fantasy. But by setting it in Kansas, hopefully, I was able to sort of ground it with things I know. And instead of it being sort of Wizard of Oz magic, it's more folk horror. It's more folk magic. What plants do you use to do this or that, and what did people believe back then? And so I did a lot of research into what magic people actually thought was real and what has just been sort of distilled over time into this over the top stuff that nobody really thought back then. So that was really interesting. I mean, doctors didn't know what they were doing back then, right? So certain herbs and powders and things, maybe there was some medicinal quality, but a lot of it was placebo. But what if it wasn't? What if it was magic? So Old Tom, it's you're not supposed to like him. And rabbits, I as a pantser, I jumped into it. I knew Old Tom was a witch master, but originally I didn't think it was actually a witch he was going after. Um, he's a snake oil salesman. Um, and I didn't know what Rabbit's deal was. I just knew this was a child that he had with him, and that gave me the opportunity to, instead of doing the whole cowboy goes out and recruits other cowboys to go riding out to get the bad guys, instead I can make it a little more organic. Maybe this is a kind of suspicious guy traveling with a child. Maybe we need to go along and make sure that kid's okay. And so she started out as kind of just a motivating factor for some of the other characters, because the stuff I write about can be fairly grim, and you usually don't want a child in the midst of all that. I don't want to say too much about Rabbit, but she becomes more and more central to everything, and a lot of the things that hopefully I fool you with early in the book. Um, as you get to know more about rabbits, you see those things sort of flipped on their heads, and you see things in a different light, and she becomes sort of a fulcrum for turning the story on its head.